Do you play tabletop RPGs but aren't sure how to run a heist? Well, you've come to the right place because today I will show you how. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your innkeeper, and today we'll be talking about heists for tabletop role-playing games. During my decade-long experience as a game master for tabletop role-playing games, I've run several heist adventures, and they're some of my favorite type of adventures to run. If run properly, they can be very engaging and fun for everyone involved, and most provide a certain sense of accomplishment that few other types of adventures provide. My campaign, The Horror at Yisuzu Landing, starts with a heist, and it's an explosive way to kickstart the campaign and form some unique bonds between the player characters. I'm also writing a heist one-shot for Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu RPG that I'm calling Khufu the Eternal. I plan to run it during the Great Old Ones Gaming charity stream that we do every year, supporting Doctors Without Borders in March. So, how can you create and run your own heist adventures? Basically, there are several rules that I use when making heists. These rules are universal and they apply to most tabletop role-playing games. Let's dive right in. A heist adventure is generally structured with 5 important elements: getting the job, the reconnaissance, the main planning stage, complications, and then the actual heist. Generally, when you run a heist, the players are either hired to complete the job or they're drawn in to the heist by having to infiltrate or take back something that was taken from them. How they get the job can be an interesting story element that eventually leads to other adventures, or it could be one of the adventures that they went on that gave them clues that eventually led them to this heist. Regardless of how they get the job, this part is crucial because it should provide the players very important information about what they're going to be dealing with. Generally, players should have an idea of the location or other factors involving the intended target. If they go in blind, it's not so much a heist as an infiltration, so that's a different type of adventure. For example, if your PCs are hired to steal a painting from a castle, their quest giver may tell them that there's a cocktail party happening in 3 days at the castle, so it may be their best option for getting inside and stealing the painting. Once the players have an idea about what their goal is, they usually want to scope out the location or locations where the heist is going to be taking place. PCs usually take notes on routines of the guards, potential traps, locations of interest such as hiding places that may be available to them, potential exit strategies, and much more. This phase of the adventure is all about gathering information. Be sure to throw in some tense moments like almost being caught or having to answer questions, having to make some social skills, or, do any kind of thing to prevent arousing some suspicion. After all, the most important part of running a heist is to keep the excitement and tension throughout. So you want to make sure to throw in those tense moments periodically. So in the example that we said earlier, one of the PCs may kidnap a guard and take their place during the guard's practice for the cocktail party. By doing so, the player character learns the routines and potential traps that are inside. While posing as a guard, another guard approaches and asks them if they're new to the job because they've never seen them before. The PC now has to make some deception rolls or use some charm spells or do any other kind of skill test in order to avoid being uncovered. Generally, you don't want combat to occur during this stage, but if the player characters make decisions that lead to combat, go ahead and let it happen. Heists should be very open and allow for a lot of improvisation, and you want to give complete freedom to the player characters. Let their decisions dictate what happens. After the PCs have gathered the information they need, they're going to have to formulate a plan based on the information that they gathered. Usually, this is the most enjoyable part of a heist adventure for players. Formulating the perfect plan has huge appeal, and players generally feel more in charge because the outcome of the adventure is generally dependent on what they decide to do in order to complete the heist and how they execute their particular plan. It's important to ensure that players feel like they have full control over the planning stages. Be sure to keep the planning stage moving though. If the PCs linger too long, some of them that are less active in the discussions might lose some interest or get bored. So definitely egg them on to keep moving during the planning stages. But keep the planning stage very freeform. Unlike dungeon adventures, heists aren't run on a room-by-room basis. Instead, they depend a lot on player planning and improvisation. During the planning stages, it's also important to make the adventure feel like things are happening, whether the players are in a particular location or not. Each location should have a sort of timeline that helps the dungeon master describe what the PCs experience at that location at that time. Unlike dungeon adventures, player characters may visit the same location several times during the planning stages of a heist, and depending on the day and time, something different might occur. So, for example, if they're pretending to be a card and they're going through the daily training routine, maybe at 1 o'clock, you're going to have the captain in the main room where the painting is being stored. And then at 3 o'clock, you have maybe the owner of the castle hanging out with some people within that same location. So keep things kind of fresh each time the player characters go to a location they've been to before. In Heist Adventures, improvisation is also really important. The players are going to be doing a lot of improvising while concocting the perfect plan, and they're most certainly going to think of something that you haven't thought of. These key moments require quick improvisation on the game master's part to ensure a fun and fulfilling experience where the PCs feel they have full control to come up with their plan. The next element is to introduce some complications. As the PCs get ready for the heist, and also when the heist proper begins, have something unexpected happen. So in our example of the PCs planning to steal painting during the cocktail party, say they scoped out the location and made note of the security procedures. When the actual cocktail party begins, maybe have some additional guards show up that the player characters were not counting on. The PCs now have to adjust their plan in order to deal with that situation. Or maybe the painting gets moved before the actual cocktail party, and the PCs now have to adjust how they plan to steal it or get it out because the new location is locked behind a vault, or maybe there's not an easy exit strategy from the new location where they moved the painting to. During the heist, it's key that even the most perfect plan gets a wrench thrown in. If the plan goes off smoothly, the PCs are going to feel a bit let down. Each step of the way should have some kind of challenge or tense moment, but don't force the plan to fully fail either. Tension and release play key roles in a successful heist, and the plan should have a chance of both success and failure. In conclusion, a heist should play as a very open-ended adventure, where player characters have a ton of control. In other words, think of it this way. You control the traffic lights and speed limit, but the player characters control the steering wheel and the accelerator. So those are my tips for running a fun heist adventure. What about you? Do you have any additional tips that you want to add to this topic? Or do you have any questions that maybe I didn't cover that you think I should have covered in the video? Go ahead and leave them down there in the comments down below. As always, I'm your Innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then.